Today for SalesTV. It's absolutely great to be with you and welcome to the next stage of SalesTV's development, which is here at Grenville Turner Studios in Cranfield University. I'm delighted to be here and delighted to be actually physically again with Tim here. It's quite alien because we've known each other for quite a while, but this is actually only the second time we've been physically in each other's
It's amazing, isn't it, that we've known each other for 5 or 6 years, and this is only the second time we've met.
Yeah, and actually, I was thinking about that this morning. Is in terms of that sort of social interaction and interactivity, it feels really quite odd. It doesn't feel as natural as before the pandemic.
Yeah.
That we'd have been hanging out with each other all the time.
Yes.
And now it's like, wow, it does feel slightly awkward, but.
But we didn't shake hands or hug or anything
No.
like this morning, so we can't obviously feel that there's an informality there.
Yes, that's true, and yes. I feel very. But you've got a great session lined up for us today. So
we have, yes, thank you. Yes, so first of all, welcome to Adam. Adam's dialing in remotely, and what we're going to be doing today is that we're going to be talking about the current state of the jobs market, how are job seekers seeing it, how are employers seeing it, and we've got a great guest, Robert Tearle, coming on to talk about that. But first and foremost, I just wanted to thank Cranfield University for the use of their facilities today. It's a great step forward, I think, in the way of using a proper studio for this podcast.
Yep.
And what we want to do with SalesTV is try and create a psychological safe space for people where they can come on and debate, and what we're trying to do is find the bright people out there who can actually come on and educate. So this is about education as well as sharing ideas. So sharing ideas with the guests, but also comments. So thank you, Andrew, for your comment. But also coming on and chatting with the audience as well, and having those sort of conversations. So Adam, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Adam Gray. I'm Tim Hughes' business partner, and I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite. And to echo what Tim said, what a fantastic opportunity this is. I mean, I feel like we're grown-ups almost. A proper TV studio with green screens and people dialing in. It is a lovely change from our little homemade thing that we've been doing up until now.
Absolutely. Thank you. And without further ado, can we bring Robert on? Hey, Robert. Hey, how you doing?
Hey, and good morning. I'm really well, thank you. And you?
Good, very good, yes. And Robert, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I basically, before I came into headhunting, I spent about 8 years selling sort of computers and what have you. And then for the last 25 years, I've been in the initially recruitment business, but now I'm very much a headhunter. And what I've done throughout those 25 years is effectively recruit sales leaders and salespeople, by and large for computer companies, but also into other areas as well, in B2B services and business process outsourcing and things like that. And that sort of experience spans the UK and USA, Far East, Europe and what have you. So at the moment, I'm mainly sort of recruiting for companies that are in scale-up mode, but effectively I tend to see all of the market. I think that the other thing happens is that for anybody who's a headhunter or who's in recruitment, by default, you get into job search conversations with candidates. So that's my background, and I'm looking forward to talking with everyone today.
Well, the thing that I realise about you, Robert, for me, you're my barometer about what's going on in the marketplace, because I remember having a conversation with you. What was it, some 12 months ago, where you were telling me that you'd been onto LinkedIn and you'd done some research, and what happened was that you found that there was one candidate going for 5 jobs.
Yeah.
So an individual could pick and choose whatever they wanted. The employers were basically saying, we can't get anybody. And we had this thing called the Great Resignation, because what I can do is, if I don't like it, if you're not providing the right type of jelly beans in the office, I can basically say, I'm going to walk out and go and get another job. And then you said to me, I think it was probably about a year ago, you said, we're going into recession. And this is even before the newspapers said anything about it at all. And then I think you said to me recently that we've completely flipped. So we've gone from one person chasing 5 jobs to 5 people chasing 1 job, or thereabouts. How are you seeing it?
Yeah. So I think just to go back to that, I think when we spoke last year, we were talking about the tech sector, and the number of vacancies outstripped the number of job seekers by sort of 4 to 1. Of course, you don't have to go and recruit somebody who's unemployed, and by and large, what I'm doing is recruiting people who are employed. But just coming back to the point, I looked at the figures this morning. Now, strangely enough, on LinkedIn, there's 35 million people with a LinkedIn profile in the United Kingdom, and effectively the total number of people working in the UK is 33 million. So it suggests that actually everybody in the UK who's working has got a LinkedIn profile, but not everybody in the UK who's working is actually relevant to use LinkedIn as a sort of platform, which really is for sort of professional and semi-professional types of people. But effectively, I had a look this morning, and effectively there are 4.1 million people in the UK who are employed in sales, and effectively of those 470,000 are open to a move. In other words, 10% are open to a move. That 10% doesn't mean necessarily that they're all looking, but effectively what's happened is that the economy's gone into a state of decline, and therefore there are fewer vacancies. And I think that there's been a lack of confidence in the market. There's been a lot of adjustment, and effectively, I think what the economists are saying is that the future growth as we go into 24, 25, 26, and what have you is going to be about 1% economic growth, which isn't absolutely huge. So I think that effectively what was a job seekers market it is now less. So there's many factors attached to this. I think what's important to say is that we still actually got a very high proportion of people in the UK who are employed. So effectively about 96.5% of the UK population, working population, is employed. In other words, the unemployment rate is only 3.5%. So it's incredibly low, the lowest it's been for about 25 or 30 years. So effectively, there is somewhat of a worker talent skill shortage. We're then in the situation whereby, as each year goes by, employers become smarter about how they choose to go about making senior specialist hires, and as a consequence of which they are looking to take into account more factors and apply a greater degree of scrutiny. And so for some of the positions that I've been headhunting into, I've sort of noticed 21 sort of points on which a employer may sort of choose to determine that a candidate sort of somebody that they could offer, or not. And then you've got a greater degree of scrutiny throughout the recruitment process, more interviews, more in depth, yada yada. So that's what I'm seeing.
So what you're saying is that there was it 400 and something thousand people are. So on LinkedIn, what you can do is you can say that you're looking for work. In effect, what you're doing is that you're saying to headhunters, I'm not happy with what I'm doing, and you can come and get me.
Which I've always found slightly odd, and I'd love your intake on this, Adam and Robert, which is, what does that say to your current employer? Or are they not looking at their employees?
Well, I'm guessing they're not
the
looking.
current employer shouldn't be able to see the fact that the person's looking.
Right, okay.
Okay, so the current employer shouldn't be able to see that. There is also the term sort of like, somebody's casually looking. And sometimes if somebody's working for a big company, sometimes the people working at big companies are sometimes indifferent as to whether or not somebody's open to a move, because they see themselves almost working for an institution.
Okay. I played around, Tim set us off on preparation for this. So I spent some time on Statistica trying to track the number of sales and associated jobs. And doesn't matter about the numbers. My numbers were a lot lower than you on Statistica, but about 1 million. But actually over the last 10 years, the number's been steadily tracking up, Robert. And then all of a sudden, actually after the pandemic, between 2022 and 2021 and 22, it fell off by about 100,000, and it was roughly equal as well to the number of open sales roles on LinkedIn. And that links to a lot of the CEOs I talk to and a lot of the sales leaders saying they still have a real problem finding talent, and that's what Tim's comment was around the prep. So I'd love your view on this. Really, it's not as simple as it was when we were all in sales, which was downturn, FD takes out red pen and starts striking off salespeople. How do we read this market with these different dynamics at play?
So effectively, each and every year, society becomes a more complex place in which to work, and everything just becomes much more specific. And going hand in hand with that, employers take assessment of candidates become more and more specific. I think when you look at salespeople and sales leaders, employers may be considering some of the following factors when assessing people, and the list didn't used to be as long as this. I'll just share a few with you.
Please
So
do.
First
Yes.
of all, got seniority. So is the person an individual contributor? Are they a manager? Are they a manager of managers? Are they a CRO stroke sales director? Are they determining their own strategy, or are they implementing somebody else? So that you've got the level of seniority. You've then got what's the emphasis of the role? Is it new business? Is it account management? Is it channel sales or whatever? And then you've got what's the product type being sold, and what's the market that people are selling into. And for the product type, often you'll have two levels of definition, not just one. So it might be that somebody wants somebody who's in the business application space, but a subset might be HR or marketing sort of apps. We then got the market that's being sold into, and that might be the financial market, and then they may want a subset that basically says it's investment banks.
Yeah.
So then we've got, sorry?
I was going to say it could be financial services and insurance or something.
Exactly, yeah. So effectively insurance to banking, two really quite sort of different things. We've then got the company size. So it's a lot of small company employers who don't want people with big company backgrounds, and nor sort of vice versa.
Yeah.
And then we've got the value chain. So effectively, if somebody's selling a product that's got a ticket value of 5,000, that's completely different from selling an outsourcing contract that may have a value of 50 million or a billion, sort of even. So effectively, you've then got various nuances that are sort of taken hold, which are around. You've got sales operations, job types, and other sort of nuances attached to it. And then from an employer's perspective, they're in a situation whereby they will always be looking at the stability of the person and the track record of the person. And this is where it largely sort of falls apart. So from an employer's perspective, hiring isn't easy. If you've got a big brand name, ordinarily that's going to attract people to want to work for you, because a lot of people find that sort of appealing. But if a company's not got a recognizable brand name, it's more difficult to be attracting them in.
So can you said you've got a list of things that people are looking at. Could you just quickly rattle through those, Robert?
So you've got some other ones which I've not sort of talked about. So you've got a question as to, do you actually like the person? And in recent years, I think a lot of people have become very complacent with regard to how they present themselves to the market in every sort of way. But you've got a likability factor, and you can sort of, when you look at recruitment, you can say, there's three characteristics that somebody's got to possess, which is, can they do the job? Do they want the job? Will they fit in? And the will they fit in can be a cultural thing, but as much of that, it's a likability factor. Do they want the job? It is another sort of characteristic, and then you've got a sort of salary match sort of dynamic. When I'm looking at people, effectively my job is to go and get the best of the best. That's what I'm paid for. I'm paid for A players, not B players, not C players, and so effectively I will apply a set of principles that effectively look to mitigate risk from an employer's perspective. And you're kind of in a situation whereby if somebody's been working for a long for a company for a long period of time, let's say 10 or more years, they are a higher risk factor than employing somebody who's worked in their most recent employer for 3 or 5 years. And then you can sort of look as to how long somebody been working within a job. And often I'll count the number of employers on a candidate's CV or LinkedIn sort of profile. But I think also flipping back to, we're here on SalesTV Live, and the reality is that we live in a world in which any sales professional, any sales leader if they're an A player, they're going to be using social media, and they need to be using social media, which means that they need a good, LinkedIn profile.
Can I just jump in there as a tangent? Is you just touched on a really interesting point, and it's maybe my biases here, Robert, but I used to look at CVs and go, oh, stability, been there 4 or 5 years. I don't know your view, Tim, but now I look at younger people who are in companies for 18 months.
But there's that balance, isn't it, which is between somebody that's been somewhere for 6 months,
Yep.
and they could say, well, I went there and it didn't work for me. Or it could be ability, you don't know. And then someone who's been there for 4 years, or someone who's been there for 10 years. And there's always that balance, isn't there, Robert, between the tenure and that ability to work out as a candidate, where's the best point to leave, and go and get that next role, or am I too long in a job? But if you look at I look at a lot of millennial people on LinkedIn, and they've been somewhere for 6 months, 18 months, 12 months, 6 months, 18 months. And I don't know whether that was the market, or whether that's ability, or whether that's actually ambition.
That's a really good point. You can't tell from a piece of paper. But I mean, Adam, bringing you in if we can, I remember a conversation which we had deep in the pandemic about actually how does a person make themselves more appealing and more attractive to have a customer conversation or any type of conversation using their LinkedIn profile?
Well, I think, excuse me, I think that's a really interesting thing, isn't it? Because how you present yourself is markedly different, particularly if you're in sales, is markedly different whether or not you're looking for a job or looking for a customer. Because if you're looking for a job, you would tend to say, I'm a hard-hitting, aggressive, tenacious salesperson and nobody ever gets away from me. And an employer might think that's what I'm looking for, somebody that's a closer, although that's a little bit outdated and old-fashioned now. But equally, a customer or a prospect is never going to want to talk to you if you present yourself in that manner. So I think that there is this kind of approachable versus professional. The more professional, particularly in sales, the more professional you look, the less likely you are to be able to do your job, because you need to be approachable and friendly and a helpful resource rather than somebody that is a sales-focused, number-driven, overachieving, president's club visiting, selling machine. So there is that kind of dichotomy there. And I think that part of the challenge that people see in terms of how they present themselves on social is absolutely down to this. I'm not sure what is the appropriate way to present myself, because clearly I want to be making my number and achieving in my current role. But equally, I want people like Robert to see that I'm somebody that might be open to a better offer at a more prestigious company or another level of career development. So yeah, it is an interesting paradox in which salespeople who are contributing but are thinking they might want to move on and find themselves.
So we've had this comment, which is that this person has submitted CVs to 50 companies but has had no answer. Now, we're going to get on to talking about what it is that we can do to look better to employers, but there's obviously an issue here somewhere where people are saying, or people are applying for jobs and not necessarily getting a response.
Yeah, I think that's obviously, and I know people who've been in situations like that where actually they've found a role almost by accident by just having a conversation. Obviously, that person's very proactive. There may be something that's not quite standing out on that CV, which is tough. But yeah, I come back to that point that Adam's been making there around that balancing act. And I can remember a really good friend of mine who was head of recruitment for IBM. And 2009, he went, and again, Robert, I'd love your feedback on this. He said, we're not in a global downturn. Everything's wonderful. And I went, are you kidding me? We're in the middle of the biggest financial crisis we've ever seen. And he went, yeah, but every CV I get, they're 150% a goal. So everybody must be doing fantastically brilliantly. Yeah, I couldn't argue with that. I had to kind of like giggle into my coffee when he actually said it. But that's true, isn't it? The credibility of your people on Salesforce is everyone is super successful, customer centric, and fantastic with, processes and colleagues. So how do you pick through that then, Robert?
Well, do you mind if we just step back a second?
Yeah.
Because effectively what we were talking about is somebody making 50 approaches and not getting any responses. And the fact of the matter is that used to happen 25 years ago and still happens today. And I think is highly undesirable, very unpleasant for people who are looking for jobs. However, unfortunately, that is the way in which the world is. There are some things that people can potentially do to increase their sort of acceptance sort of rates. But first of all, I think let's just show sympathy to that individual, and also say to everybody who might be listening to this, if you're on the receiving line, please, acknowledge CVs. People are grateful. If it is that you simply say, read your CV, sorry, it's not the right profile. Wish you
That's great advice,
search going forward. So that being the first thing, I think we've got to be really sympathetic, particularly to those people who are unemployed in between jobs. I remember once upon a time, Tim either called me or dropped me in. He said, Robert, one of your postings have gone ballistic on LinkedIn. And I said, really? What on earth are you talking about? And he said, oh, it's like got 1 million views. I think it went up to 5 million views. And the posting was all about actually showing empathy to job seekers with regard to actually getting back to them, which just by the way, I'm in a situation whereby I'm probably up at 95%, 98% of the time that I get back to people. In some instances, I don't get back to people. It's not deliberate. Sometimes you can overlook things, or sometimes things can just drift on that you're sort of waiting to hear about things. But I think with regard to a lot of recruiters, what's happening is that the CVs are going into an organization. They're being read by people. People are so consumed. Most hours, particularly sort of the internal recruiters, who are often recruiting into an endless list of sort of jobs. And I remember somebody complaining that, they hadn't heard back about a job. And I remember seeing that actually one recruiter had replied back to somebody at 10 past midnight on a Sunday night. So anyway, look, that is what it is.
But I think it's important to pick that up, Robert, because apart from the fact that there's a comment, it's clearly happening. And clearly happening still. And I'm going to say something controversial. I haven't got my glasses on, but I suspect I think I can see, and I think that person's black. And I wonder whether there's racism there in the recruitment process. And I hopefully there isn't. I mean, what do you think? Do you see discrimination going on in terms of ethnicity, religion, age, etc.? Sorry to spring a controversial question on you.
Yes. We've got to age, yes.
Yes.
With regards to religion, less so today than it used to be in the past. I mean, don't forget, if you go to London and you're in the city of London, you look around you, the chances are that probably 60 or 70% of the people that are in London weren't born in this country. I'm not talking about what colour they have or whatever. They may be Polish, they may be Chinese, they may be French, they could be anything. But effectively, the bottom line being, and I think if you look as to the papers this morning, Kemi Badenoch, was sort of featured, Suella Braverman, you got female leaders, or British sort of British colour, in power. I think much less. So. You look at Rishi Sunak, and we got some fantastic, sort of coloured people. I think that there are more sort of, I just use the term British Indians in a lot of sales jobs than there are British Africans. And I often think, why is that? And I think that we all need support to be brought on in life. I think that we're sort of in a situation whereby the age issue, age discrimination is as prevalent today as it was sort of 25 years ago. And you're kind of in a situation whereby if you're a 60-year-old CEO or a 60-year-old CRO managing a large sort of team, you're kind of in a situation whereby that experience is going to go in your favor. But if you're a 55, 60-year-old account manager, individual contributor, then there's a good chance that that's going to go against you. But with regard to age discrimination, and Andy was talking about this earlier, and saying that young people have got a lot of young people hop around, and the reality is that I think that a lot of we did that in our generation, but I think that in recent years there's been a lot of that because the jobs market has been so buoyant that if they did they gave their job, they could get a new one, blah 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 blah. But less so now. And effectively, individuals need to think as to how they build value into their career. On the subject of Cranfield University and anything like it, individuals need to think about, do I have the right qualifications to make my career success, manageable? But you've also got a sort of relationship between age and the value chain. So somebody young you could associate with selling something that's of a lower order value, less sort of complex. And the higher up the value chain that you go, and the more sophisticated the sales approach and the seniority that you're dealing with in companies, then actually age can sort of go in somebody's favour.
I think that's a really good point. So I know, Adam, you've been talking about how we focus on a sales team of the week. And I don't know if you saw that the submarine contract that was won this for 2.4 billion, and it just triggered it would be great to go and interview that team. But to your point, Robert, I would imagine they were all quite senior, because
I think with regard to the outsourcers and a lot of the big contracts of an outsourcing nature, might be $1 billion, 5 billion, 10 billion or whatever. And I've recruited people who've sold billion outsourcing deals, but the reality is some of those outsourcing deals are not sold by salespeople.
It's a team.
They're sold by one chief executive talking with another. And don't forget that also comes on to team-based selling approaches. Right. I think in the context of today's conversation, I think it's largely around people with regards to their job search sort of activities. And is it okay if I just push back onto that side?
Yeah, please do, Robert.
And from the context of that, it's a new year, believe it or not, for Cranfield students. We're going to have a lot of people who do a lot of studying here, either MBAs or MSCs full-time, and then we'll go back out into the job market. A lot of them will end up in leadership roles where revenue is important, or going into sales and marketing. So actually, anything that you can give as advice to those guys and the ones that have just left is going to be massively valuable.
So I think with regards to, when somebody goes and gets a master's or an MBA, it's not an immediate passport to success, but invariably they should be able to go further, faster. And, then they're at an advantage when promotions have been awarded or when they're interviewing for jobs externally. If one person's got a master's and others got another one hasn't, then that could make a difference. And they're going to be, if they've had the benefit of that education and that insight, they're going to be more convincing in the way in which they operate within a company. So I want to come back to this.
Yep.
There's a lot of people, from said they go and get a degree in geography, they go and get a degree in history, and then they come into the world of work and come into the world of selling, and most people want to sort of be progressive. Kind of a situation whereby a degree such as geography or history demonstrates intelligence, great, but it doesn't mean they've actually learned a subject. And I think we're sort of in a situation now whereby anybody who's working for 15 or 50, who's going to be expected to work for 15 or more years, they need to start thinking about investing in themselves and their future. And part of that being education. Somebody could go on a training course, or they can get experience working on a project, which those two things help career development. But effectively, there's nothing like a certification. And the other thing being is that when employers sponsor and pay for a certification for an employee, it makes those employees feel hugely sort of valued. So I think with regard to people going into Cranfield or other learning establishments, I think it's a really good thing, and it demonstrates that they're ambitious. And then once they come out of it, just because they've got an MBA or masters and whatever doesn't mean that they're going to get an immediate passport to a job that's the next level up. But once they've gone back into work, if they approach their career and they approach networking and they approach their job correctly, then there's every reason why they are going to accelerate their careers further, faster,
Tim, have
and
you?
also improve their long-term jobs. Anyway,
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely spot on. Tim, have you got any more comments from the audience?
Jess Flack, who is a great contributor to us in the audience. Do we see discrimination changing with returnships? I don't know how much you deal with that, Robert.
and we're basically, you're talking about internships. You're talking about, basically
Returnships.
typically.
Returnships would be someone coming back from maternity, I believe.
Why would there be discrimination for a black or white or whatever
Well,
size denomination?
hopefully there isn't because of the law, but
I do think there is a bias in salespeople, sales leaders, because they are predominantly white male, and I think that you can't shift that bias, and it's wrong. The ISP years ago did some work with EY looking at diverse sales teams, and found with age, gender, and ethnic background, the more diverse you were actually 7% more profitable. So it's proven, but we just look at things and perhaps
I don't think it's an employer's bias.
Okay.
I think they're just in a situation whereby there's a shortage of talent, and effectively, to employ more women, you need more women coming into the workforce who gain experience, blah 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 blah. So you're in a situation whereby I think historically women, in the past, they didn't have the same opportunity to come into work as they do today.
Yeah.
So today it's much more open, much more accessible. But effectively, organisations are very, very pro, women. And I think that the other thing being with regard to selling and women, women are more emotionally intelligent than men, and therefore it's great to have them in meetings, and it's great to have them in leadership positions. And effectively, emotional intelligence in leadership situations, basically leaders who are rich in emotional intelligence are 40% more successful, and sales teams who proactively apply emotional intelligence in the way which they approach their work have been seen to sort of like increase sales by sort of 50%. I went off track slightly on that. What we were talking about was accessibility for the workplace for for women. Of course, the difficulty being is that if a lady checks out of work for 5 or 7 years to maybe have 2 kids, and then she wants to come back in, she doesn't have a recent track record, and her experience would be seen to be out of date. And I think really the best we can do is to try to be more sort of accommodating. Yeah. And I think that when you talk about returnships, that's a great way to pull women back in. But basically, I think that any sales organisation or any organisation that's fielding 10 salespeople event or in a sales meeting to the marketplace looks absolutely stupid. Basically it's like we're the amount of times, and today we're 5 people, we're all men. Basically we've got to pull more women through, and absolutely. That's not, I don't think, for the lack of trying. I think that effectively you've got an availability piece.
I think you've got to be very brave. I was interviewing somebody here in the studio, and we actually got James King from IdeaGen on, and they were talking, Robert, they actually have a 72-year-old inside sales rep in Australia, and she's the highest performing sales rep with the deepest relationships. Wow. And I'm reinforcing that. I was in a well-known TV broadcast, and they were talking about, they brought somebody, returnships, 55-year-old gentleman, and he wasn't quite comfortable enough to be honest about his work ethic. He would hide it. But he would be in at 7:30 in the call centre, and he would leave at 6, and people would go, "Why are you here?" And he'd go, "Well, I'm beating the traffic." He was a bit embarrassed about, this is the way I was brought up in my work ethic. And actually, that work ethic, that mentorship and role model rubbed off on the rest of the entire team. And they all came in earlier, stayed a little bit later, listened to his relationship capability, and the whole team raised. So I think, experience is a hugely valuable thing for people that do need mentorship and help in the workplace.
So Robert, so what can people be doing in terms of I'm out of work and
okay, so
I'm
we've
looking,
got 3
what
clusters.
can I do? Yeah,
we've got 3 clusters. Okay, cluster number 1 is people need to put a structure into their job search. Looking for a job these days is more complex to navigate than it was 10 plus years ago. So they need to have a structure for their job search, which means having a plan. What am I going to do? What kind of jobs am I targeting? How am I going to do it? It also means organizing it so you can record your activity, maybe with a CRM on a spreadsheet. And it also means actually interacting with others, seeking the opinion of others to see what other people have got to say. So effectively putting a structure into your job search. And the final piece of that is around managing your mood and energy level, because anybody who's looking for a job, like the person who got in touch earlier, said they've made 50 applications. Yeah. And by the way, that's quite small in comparison to a lot of people who might have made 200, 300, 400. So effectively, there's a need to maintain self-belief and confidence. And by the way, absolutely more or less everybody gets back into work. Okay, so people are going to feel pretty bad when they're in between jobs, but absolutely, more or less absolutely everyone gets back into work. The second thing being is that a lot of people that they jump into job search mode and they take the easy approach, and they actually fail to leverage the 5 job search methods. And the 5 job search methods are: 1, be found, which is your LinkedIn profile. And I personally think without actually a strong LinkedIn profile, you've got no foundation for your job search, because effectively, as soon as somebody receives your application, a lot of the time people are going to look immediately at your LinkedIn profile. So you've got your LinkedIn profile, be found. That's item number 1. Item number 2.
So Robert, just to say, so as a headhunter, you're saying that every salesperson has to have a good LinkedIn profile.
Yes.
Thank you.
I feel there's a point
you're about to make there, Tim. Yeah. So then we're in a situation whereby the other things that the people need to do is make direct applications, and effectively, a lot of jobs are sourced by companies that don't want to pay recruitment fees, that have got in-house expertise, who want to source directly, and if that's the which they choose to do it, you need to sort of make sort of direct sort of applications, and those can be ones where you're making an application on a speculative basis, or you're responding to a job advert on their careers.
So that's proactively going to the sales leader and saying, "Can I come and work for you?"
Correct.
And I'm not saying going to the sales leader saying, "Have you got any jobs?" I'm saying, "Can I come and work for you?" Because that's such a flattering thing to say.
You might want to say that. It depends as to which way you want to express it, but yes. Yeah. And they're probably going to respond quite positively to a direct approach, particularly if it's potentially on the phone. Yeah? So that being the thing, we then got job ads, we then got recruitment firms, and then we've got networking. So those are the 5 job search methods. 1, optimizing your LinkedIn profile.
Yep.
2, making direct applications directly to people and via the jobs portals on these company sites. 3, using job adverts, applying to job adverts on LinkedIn or whatever the sites are. 4, using recruitment firms, and then 5, networking. Those are the 5 methods of finding a job. And sometimes people would think, "Oh, that method's not for me," but actually, the reality is that those people who use all forms of job search will find a better job faster. There's been research done on that by the company called LHH, which is the world number 1, and was the world number 1 sort of outplacement agency, which is all about professionally guiding people back into work.
What was slightly alarming that when Robert said have a really good profile, that Adam started writing down. Then I saw. So,
in fact, the thing that I wanted to wind us back to was that Robert said one of the things is that you've taken your BA in geography, and that shows a level of intelligence. But for people that are planning to be in a job for 10 or 15 years, they need to continue to invest in themselves. And the idea that you would have ongoing, more focused training and learning around what it is that you're doing in role, particularly if that is certificated by an external body and supported by your employer, is an incredibly valuable thing for you as an individual, but also to bind you to the employer because you feel some sense of duty because they've helped to educate you and they've footed the bill for that. I was thinking to myself, if only there was such a training thing for salespeople, something which was really pertinent and was was certificated by a professional body.
And I'm delighted to be on this journey with you guys. It's very generous of you to mention that. And I'm just delighted because I actually did a geography degree, so I thought you were going to stop at it normally shows some level of intelligence, but not in your case, Andy.
So Jess Flack has basically put up a comment and she shared a link in the chat that says that TalkTalk are offering job seekers free broadband for 6 months. So I don't know if that's going to help anybody. I guess that's in the
And I
UK.
think that's a really good thing to do.
I do, yes.
It's social responsibility.
It is, yeah.
It's TalkTalk as a brand. It's difficult to figure out how you impact, but what fantastic way to actually do something positive.
And with 5 minutes to go, Robert, what else can people do?
So effectively, there's a relationship between your LinkedIn profile and your CV. They kind of need to have the same qualities, and effectively, people aren't doing enough to make themselves attractive to prospective employers, because often what they're doing is they're giving the person who may be looking at their profile or looking at their CV a puzzle, and we don't want to be in a guessing game. Yeah. And so effectively, what often will happen is to talk about the photo at the end, but with regards to what normally will happen on a CV is, number one, there's the person's company. And the company might be called ABC Corporation. We don't really have a clue what ABC Corporation are. Not everybody works for Google, Apple, except Ford Motor Company, etc., etc. So effectively, with most people, with regard to their CV, good idea for each of the recent employers, a 2 or 3 line description. What is your employer's line of business? 1. 2, is often it's not clear what somebody's doing. And there's a lot of job titles that are very obscure. So in the context of salespeople, if somebody's a sales manager or sales director, say so. If you're a pre-sales consultant, say so. If you're a chief revenue officer, say so. But avoid coming out with something that's obscure that may mean something in your company, but doesn't mean anything in another company.
Yeah,
you then got the sort of context of what somebody's doing. So you've got responsibilities and you've got achievements. And with regard to responsibilities, people hate it when they see a CV that's full of responsibilities and not got any achievements. But the responsibilities really are saying what it is that you were doing. I was selling, cameras to South Africa or whatever it could be. But basically, you then got the achievements. And with regard to the achievements need to weigh in as being relevant to the dimensions of the job that you're applying to. So sometimes salespeople will put an achievement on their CV. It might be something that they're proud of for some reason, but maybe they put that they won this deal for 100,000, and they're applying for a job that's going to have a target 2 million, okay, and be selling deal values that's like 250 grand, 500,000. So effectively, the achievements need to be, sort of substantial.
Yeah.
The other issue with regard to people, and their LinkedIn profile, Adam was saying about, sort of people being too sort of that need to be casual. You're kind of in a situation whereby LinkedIn is a professional site. You need a professional photo, and you've got this case of too formal, too informal. And my advice would be to dress the level up from what you might do on a normal sort of work sort of day. That you need to look smart. So not a case of sweatshirts or anything else like that. And ideally smiling, looking straight at the camera.
Yeah, I know. I keep telling these guys all the time about smiling.
That's laughing, Tim. It's a different thing.
Yeah. And what else can we do, Robert? I mean, that's really been fantastic in terms of our LinkedIn profile, CV, anything else?
Well, I mean, most people will say that networking should form the pillar of your job search activity. I think if you speak with a diverse number of people, it's a really good idea, because often what happens with job search, you've often got a case of the blind leading the blind. And some people would say, right, use this CV template, and it's something that everybody else used. It's a load of rubbish. 15 years ago, still a load of rubbish today. And I think really basically seeking different perspectives is a good idea.
It's brilliant.
Right. Andy, do you want to close out?
Well, yeah. I mean, Robert, firstly, huge thanks to you. I think this has been massively valuable, both from a general perspective, but I think
Thank you, Robert. You were amazing.
Brilliant. Adam, thanks for being in the show as always. Look forward to seeing you later tonight. Tim, great pleasure to be
Thank
here
you.
with
It's been
you
fantastic. It's
on the
been
show.
awesome, isn't it? And thank you for the crew and team at
Chris,
Cranfield University.
Chris, David, Toby, everybody on the team. Marco, thank you so much. Really looking forward to this next chapter with you guys and helping us evolve.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Bye.
Bye.